So this video will be shorter. I'm going to pick up where I left off on doing over range of motion. I'm making this recording after lab yesterday, so I don't think I'll need to share quite as much information. But I did want to just go over the importance when we're looking at manual muscle tests to really be mindful that if you are doing a lumbar or trunk, you can do a 4 or 5 because you are applying no manual resistance. The only manual contact you're going to have with your patient is to prevent or correct substitutions, right? So that is what, that's why 4 or 5 is okay. And you start with a 3, and I just want to reiterate that. You don't just jump to a 5 and say, okay, let's provide, have you do a 5 and see if you can do it. That's not how you would do it with the patient. You start with a 3 just like we did last term, and then you move up. And if they can, from a 3 to a 5, fantastic. If they're struggling, then, you have to make that call whether it's a 4, right? So, and that depends upon, and you have resources to reference. You have a lot of references already in this course, going back to week 1, including the video that I did working with Steve. So, cervical, just want to say very explicitly, you're not providing 4 or 5 in the cervical spine for manual muscle tests. If you have a patient, you will show where you would provide resistance on the different parts of the head, following what you've learned and what is demonstrated in the videos. And you're not going to provide any resistance. You're not going to ask them to move them against your resistance. And if you do not have a partner and you're submitting your own video showing yourself doing it, you're going to place your hand in the appropriate spot on your head to show where you would provide resistance if you were testing a 4 or a 5. So I think that's pretty clear. I think that was demonstrated very well in lab yesterday. So that's what I really want to emphasize, is that. And if you're doing a self-video, you need to talk about it. You can't just put your hand up there and expect me to know what you're doing. You need to talk about it. And similarly, if you're going to be placing a hand on a patient, you need to have that, verbal conversation with them before you put your hands on them, even though, again, you're not providing resistance, but you are going to identify where you would provide resistance if you were doing that test to help prepare you for week 0 in September, when we're going to revisit this and instruct you where you put your resistance and check you off before you were to do so on a classmate. Okay, and then here you're not going to be adding anything. This is just, same grading as you did last term. This sheet looks the same. You don't need to turn this sheet in. I want to emphasize that. That's really important. Just like last term, Kat and I will have her own blank sheet like this, and we'll put your name on it, and we'll go ahead and do our checks and provide comments, and then get feedback back to you, either with a sheet like this, which is my preference, or limited feedback. I mean, if you did really well and there's no need to give you back a full sheet, we'll just provide the limited feedback that we need in where you submit your assignment. So I'm just going to quickly go over to that section just so you see it. I think it's important sometimes, especially when we're making these transitions back and forth, to recapture where things live in Moodle. So it should look very familiar to you. You're going to submit this skill check right in this place, right? And this is where you're going to put your O. And this is where you're going to submit your video if you're doing a video recording. Re-emphasize again, you can do this live in Open Lab with me or Kat. I have stated to a few of you have asked me that it will likely happen the second hour of Open Lab, realistically from my Open Lab from 11 to 12. Just touch base with me if you want to do it so I can plan ahead of time, and we'll make that work for you. And either I will be your subject, you'll walk me through it, or you can have a classmate. If a classmate is there, I'll ask you to walk them through it, whatever you're assigned, and just like you did an open lab, or not open lab, but our lab yesterday on Thursday when we broke out in small groups and paired you up with a classmate to get your peer check done. So, and can't emphasize enough the steps that you include the name of the peer, and you really provide a self-assessment, and you also provide what muscles you're testing, and not just kind of an aggregate cervical flexors. Name those cervical flexors, name those cervical rotators, name the trunk rotators. If you're having someone do an MMT, not range of motion because that's not relevant, right? And then if there are normal range of motion guidelines for tape measures, that you write that down, or if there's none, say no established guidelines, or no established norms would be how you'd phrase that. Okay, I think we got enough taping here. This is where those tapes live, or the videos. You probably already know that because you're accessing this, and we'll say goodbye for now.